conviction, all but once. McElroy was often known to brag that his Kansas City lawyer, Richard G. McFadden, also represented the mob and would effectively keep him out of jail.
So he's walking around town saying, I can do whatever I want. I got a big fancy pants lawyer from out of town, and he's going to make sure all you small folk can't touch him.
I wonder if part of it is because it seems like all of the things he did were relatively small time, right? At this point.
Oh, I mean, that 21 is including some of the bigger ones
that we're going to get into.
Well,
at least the list that you made so far, there's like a lot of, I still
oh, that's just an appetizer. I just fed you a cracker. I'm about to come up with a platter now. And it's not a good platter, so enjoy it, because it's about to turn into a shit sandwich.
Another tactic to avoid jail that McElroy would employ is intimidating witnesses. To do this, he'd follow them or park outside their homes and watch them until they were no longer willing to testify against him. His various alleged crimes include robbery, harassing/assaulting women, destroying property, threatening lives, and assault, including shooting at least 2 people. One of those 2 people he shot was local farmer Romaine Henry, who McElroy shot in the stomach when Henry tried to chase McElroy off Henry's land.
Stomach of all places?
On his own land.
On his own land.
He was probably enjoying a nice glass of sweet tea.
Yeah.
And then this fucking knucklehead comes on his property. He gets shot in the stomach.
That's the worst thing you can do.
I'm sure any place. A pretty bad place to get shot. Oh yeah, shoulder gang head.
Before we get into McElroy's relationships, I'd like to issue a fair warning that what follows is upsetting. It depicts extreme violence towards women, but it's important for me to tell you in order to paint the full picture. McElroy was accused of raping 2 young women as young as 12 years old, both of which he was said to have married to keep them from testifying against him. One of these women was 24-year-old Trina McLeod, who was his partner, and was also present at the time of McElroy's death. Trina was McElroy's 3rd wife, though all unions were suspect due to the fact that some of his marriages overlapped, as well as the fact that McElroy was known to prefer girls around the age of 13 or 14.
Fuck this guy. That Trina right at the station right now.
In fact, McElroy actually entered a relationship with Trina when she was only 14 years old, having a child with her around that same time. Soon after having their first child, Trina attempted to escape to her parents' house. McElroy responded by allegedly burning down Trina's parents' home and shooting their dog.
First off, holy shit, is I guess like the first death. Second off, it does amaze me that at this point, I know I get he's a big force. Maybe he can use that to manipulate his way around. But at this point, I do think law and order should come. Right?
Yet, in 1981, Trina told People magazine that the house fire was, quote, just faulty wiring. To make matters worse, McElroy was also accused of abusing his first 2 wives, Sharon and Alice, as is often the case in stories of domestic abuse. In later interviews with both Alice and Trina, they seemed to minimize their abuse, and even claimed McElroy treated them well. In 1981, shortly after his death, Alice told People magazine that, quote, "Man was totally different from the way they are saying he was now. Oh, he was wild. But he wasn't guilty of all those things they say. He was honest and generous. I never knew him to steal anything, ever," end quote.
That's common. It's common. It's common, and it's sick. It makes it even grosser because this guy was maybe, dare I say, charming in some aspects.
Obviously, it sounds like he's an evil man, but people aren't always shades of black and white. It's not, this person's a good person, this person is a bad person. So as much as he was committing these heinous things, there were probably parts of him where people were like, well, he's not that bad of a guy.
Look, I'm over seeing the good in people and finding the evil qualities.
For the record, I'm not saying, well,
I get what you're saying. I just wanted to make it absolutely abundantly clear that we're for redeeming qualities and maybe see the good in people, but in some cases, throw it out.
absolutely.
Trina said in that same interview, quote, "The officers were always hassling him. They accused him of anything, even things I know he didn't do because I was with him. They just hated him because he wouldn't kneel down to them," end quote.
So the guy seems morally bankrupt to begin with.
Yes.
He's got these horrible relationships with these minors.
Yes.
They're children. So that gives you an idea of his character. It's more than likely that he just told them, "Oh, I didn't do that." And his wives probably believe them.
And that's the sad. They're already in this camp.
In all of these instances, is he just getting away with it? Is he going to court for these things?
He was getting, the cops were apprehending he was going to court. It's just that his lawyer wasn't actually that good that he would get him out. He would get him off every time. So he probably was maybe a mob lawyer that was good enough to maneuver around the law through loopholes. I don't know.
He's got to be good.
However, it's known that even the county's law enforcement officials were afraid of encountering McElroy, who was known to always be heavily armed and unafraid of shooting cops. For over 2 decades, the people of Skidmore often felt abandoned by the justice system that couldn't stop McElroy from further terrorizing them. Little did they know, an incident would occur that would change everything. On April 25th, 1980, in Ernest Bo Bowenkamp's general store, the store clerk, Evelyn Sumi, would ask McElroy's 8-year-old daughter, Tanya, to return a piece of candy she had not paid for. When he learned of the incident, McElroy was so incensed, he reportedly began stalking the Bowenkamp family. This led to the events of July 8th, 1980, when McElroy would drive into the alley behind the Bowenkamp general store. Once there, he threatened Bo Bowenkamp and shot the grocer in the neck at close range with a shotgun, marking at least the second or third time McElroy had shot somebody.
Yeah, I assume that person died.
Actually,
He got shot point blank
with a shotgun.
with a shotgun. Man,
I wouldn't consider myself an overly religious, but I could maybe buy into the concept of a little divine intervention.
Luckily, Bo Bowenkamp survived, and McElroy was arrested and charged with attempted murder. His preliminary trial was set for August 18, 1980. In typical fashion, McElroy made attempts to intimidate the Bowenkamp family and supporters to keep them from testifying. Bowenkamp's wife recalled, quote, "You can't know how intimidating he was after that. For his trial, he'd drive up to our house in his pickup at night and just sit there. Sometimes he would fire his gun. It was frightening." End quote.
That is some over-the-top supervillain bullshit. That's fucking insane.
For legal maneuvers, McElroy was able to delay the trial almost 5 months until June 25th, 1981. During this time, the acting prosecuting attorney resigned, and a young new prosecutor named David Baird was hired to fill his position. Some have speculated that McElroy had bullied the previous prosecutor to leave. The new prosecutor, David Baird, was only 3 years out of law school, yet Baird accomplished what no other lawyer had been able to do in all of McElroy's criminal history. He convicted him of a crime. Granted, McElroy was ultimately only convicted at his trial of second-degree assault. The jury set a maximum sentence of 2 years, and the judge freed him on a $40,000 bail bond pending the appeal. This was partly because Barrett lessened McElroy's charge from, quote, attempt to kill, end quote, to, quote, knowingly caused serious physical injury, end quote, to ensure that he could secure a conviction.
you try to kill someone and there's 8 different labels for it.
And he chose a label that would make the conviction.
That would have been jail.
This lawyer that they're going up against must be very good. For him to... The guy's shotgun does never shotgun.
I know.
And he felt so strongly about the dude's skills that he changed the labeling of that just so he could secure conviction. Only 2 years. And he got out. This is a case of seeking to go through the justice system. And getting got out.
It seemed like a victory almost, and then...
McElroy reportedly said in the trial, quote, the jury convicted me, and they gave me 2 years. But I tell you what, I'll never go to jail. I'll appeal and get off. I've been fighting the law since I was 13, and I'm damn near 50. I've been arrested for over 53 felonies, and this is the first one I ever lost. End quote.
Unbelievable. The showboating.
The braggadocio of this man right here is staggering. This is the problem with a man who, I guess, believes in his own myth. And is capable, especially when that man is capable of cruelty.
He's Icarus, baby.
He is Icarus. And guess what? This bad boy's about to fly towards the sun.
Soon after he was released, McElroy, bizarrely, was spotted with a rifle and bayonet at the town's local bar, D&G Tavern, where he was allegedly making graphic threats about murdering Bo Bowenkamp.
So he follows it up.
So this isn't Icarus flying too close to the sun.
He's flying into the sun.
Yeah, this is Icarus turning 90 degrees, looking at the sun, and playing chicken with it.
As a result, he was arrested and quickly released, with the only consequence being the postponement of his court hearing to July 20th, 1981, for violating his bail provisions for being armed. In the wake of these events, on the morning of July 10th, 1981, there was a meeting at the town's Legion Hall just down the street from the D&G Tavern. As many as 60 Skidmore residents attended, including both the mayor and the sheriff. The meeting's entire purpose was to discuss what they could legally do to prevent McElroy from harming anyone else. County Sheriff Dan Estes suggested the formation of a neighborhood watch.
You realize how deep of dire straits this town really is when the sheriff is saying, "Man, we should form a neighborhood watch."
Sounds like someone just raising their hand.
But the collective mindset of those in attendance seemingly could be summed up by one quote from an attendee. Quote, "We simply felt that the system had failed us. We all knew what McElroy was like, and there he was again and again. It seemed like nobody could stop him." End quote. Those at the meeting heard reports that McElroy and Trina were spotted heading to the D&G Tavern in Skidmore to grab drinks. It is said that the meeting adjourned and that the crowd of about 60 people then quietly descended upon the D&G Tavern, flanking McElroy's truck. Some even went into the bar, where they waited for him to finish his drinks. Upon their return to the truck, where Trina was sitting in the passenger seat, McElroy lit a cigarette. Trina claimed to have turned over her shoulder and seen someone pull a rifle from the back of the truck and take aim at McElroy, and then shots were fired, shattering the truck's windows. Trina reportedly dove from her side of the vehicle onto the street and was picked up by a man named Jack Clement and walked toward the bank for safety.
It started to sort through the dread building. The meeting adjourned. It's going back. They had enough. They've been pushed to the limit. It's time to take some action. I'm not afraid to admit I haven't felt some joy.
McElroy, at the age of 47, remained in the car, shot dead, getting hit twice. The shot came from roughly behind him, so he would not have seen his shooter. Bullet casings from 2 different guns were found. Notably, none of the witnesses called an ambulance.
Do you think there was one guy who was like, "I'll come"?
You just gotta harvest everyone just turns their heads toward him.
While there were as many as 60 witnesses reported at the scene, no one but Trina would come forward in the investigation that followed to say who had fired the shots. Cheryl Houston, the daughter of Bo Bowenkamp, witnessed the shooting from her family's door and said this on the silence that followed the murder. Quote, "Once the shroud of silence fell, there was going to be no one talking. They could have pushed and dug, and gotten nothing. We were so bitter and so angry at the law letting us down that it came to somebody taking matters in their own hand. No one has any idea what a nightmare we lived." Candy! Maybe Candy, May and I got talking.
Hi, Candy.
Have you still been, End quote.
I would kill to know what his dying thoughts were. Just to know that it was this guy who was so sure of himself, so sure that he had the world in the palm of his hand, that he could get away with anything, and suddenly the world, seemingly collectively, turns in on him and says, "No, we're going to shoot you in the street like a dog."
And you know what? I hate to say it, but I think he may have known it was coming, and he was one of those contestants like, whatever, I allowed this to happen.
That makes me angry, right?
In the murder investigation that followed, there was only one suspect, a shooter that Trina identified as Del Clement, who was a part owner of the D&D Tavern. However, Clement denied the charge, and there were no other witnesses to come forward. And ultimately, the DA and the coroner's jury did not order an arrest warrant or press charges. Jerry and McClaney, author of a book named In Broad Daylight, regards to the shooting, McLean describes Clement saying, quote, "It wasn't hard to detect ripping the nuts off the pickup in a burst of anger and opening up on the large black head on the other side of the rear window of the pickup." End quote. McLean also says that in the years he spent researching, he never heard another name seriously mentioned as the shooter besides Nell Clement. In 2009, Clement passed away, and up until his death, he continued to deny any role in the killing.
I don't think anyone was after glory in this incident.
No.
You know, I don't think anyone needed to say. The people who were directly affected by it, they seemingly were all gathered around. They know what happened. They know who shot him. So, you don't have to shout to the world, "Hey, it was me!" Because you walk into that general store, they give you the nod. You give them the nod.
It brings the town together.
Yeah.
It's in a weird way, this horrible event has brought the town together in a very poetic and beautiful moment.
I can imagine the town was a lot happier.
That being said, author Harry N. McLean has also noted, quote, "I personally believe it's a mistake to put too much emphasis on who pulled the trigger," end quote. Which brings us back to the town hall meeting that preceded the shooting. It's easy to wonder if the murder was a plot that formed there. Though, McLean has posed that he doesn't believe the killing was a planned vigilante action. Rather, he believes that a few people made an impulsive decision to take action, but the small town stood by them in solidarity with their complicit silence.
Let me ask you this. Some people have maybe questioned, was this meeting a place where they were like, okay, we're going to go out there, you two are going to shoot him, and we're not going to see it? I'm not saying that is what happened, but if it is in fact how it happened, is that fine? Does that make this worse?
I don't think it makes it worse. I do think it was probably spontaneous.
I think maybe, people saw that nothing was going to happen. The sheriff was mentioning that neighborhood watch.
But I think that maybe fed the idea. If they were talking about, well, we need to keep an eye on this guy, we all need to band together, then they get news that he's heading to the tavern, probably great, let's just go intimidate him. Maybe all of them, you know, a group of them decided to go do that, which would lead to one of them just...
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a meeting where obviously everyone was hearing out in this meeting for this meeting.
And if you collectively understand that everyone in this town feels the same way for the first, like, I don't know.
For the first, maybe this is the first time they're all hearing out their grievances. They realize there's nothing they can do to stop this man. They know everyone feels this way.
Yeah.
And then you hear he's outside by the tavern. And like, everyone goes, let's just go out there and look. And two people,
They know.
they're like, yeah.
I know everybody's got their back.
Once the local major cases got investigated, the FBI also investigated. Ultimately, 3 grand juries heard evidence, but no one was ever indicted for the murder. Trina filed a $6 million wrongful death lawsuit against the town of Skidmore, Nottoway County, the sheriff Denny Estes, Skidmore's mayor Steve Peters, and Del Clement on July 9th, 1984. However, the case ultimately settled for $17,600. Trina ended up leaving town and remarried, and passed away in 2012 on her 55th birthday. As recently as 2006, then Nottoway County Sheriff Ben Espy said of the McElroy case, quote, "They all seem to know who did it, but they don't want to get involved. I'll do everything in my power to arrest the person," end quote. Though, it's noted that he is said to have said this in a tone, quote, "conveying no particular optimism."
Vigilante justice is a slippery slope. It is. It's an ethical dilemma. You don't want a whole town getting carried away. Maybe that guy doesn't cut his lawn often enough. You don't want the whole town murdering him. But in this case, I think it's abundantly clear
I do.
that some action was needed.
Action was needed to be taken. Whatever that action ended up being, we were going to have to live with because they've gone through years and decades, literally, of oppression from this man. I think it would be unfortunate to take away from what this town did together and the fact that he put this man against something.
I don't think we've ever really delved into moral dilemmas quite like this.
We did metaphorically draw the line in the sand. Where you stand on it is up to you.
After McElroy's death, the town as a whole saw a significant decrease in the amount of cattle and pig thefts in the county, even just in the subsequent month. The case garnered national media attention from outlets such as Rolling Stone and 60 Minutes. Headlines often emphasize the vigilante nature of the killing. How you feel about it can be debated both internally and externally, but regardless, the case of Kenrex McElroy will officially remain unsolved.
This week on BuzzFeed Unsolved, we cover the case of the East Woman, one of the most mysterious cold cases of all time. I don't want to say that a lot, but not only are the culprits suspicious, but the identity of the woman itself is a factor here.
So it's a mystery on a mystery.
It's a layered mystery.
I like a layered mystery.
It's like a two-layered dip that you have at a Super Bowl party. You're like,
So where these beans come from?
oh, what about that cheese? Put a little salsa on top. Three-layer dip, and maybe a third layer.
Okay, hungry.
Mystery. On November 29th, 1970, in the Eastdalen Valley near Bergen, Norway, a family on a Sunday hike discovered the body of a woman wedged between large rocks. One of the first people on the scene, and the last one living, police lawyer Carl Halvor Oos remembers the first thing they noticed was the very strong scent of burnt flesh. The body was severely burned, and the arms were in a boxer position in the air, common in burnt bodies, while the front of the body, including her face, was burned beyond recognition. The backside was bizarrely not burned. The officers were unable to tell how long she had been there or when she died. The woman was believed to be about 5 feet and 4.5 inches tall, aged between 25 and 30 years old.
So the front of her is burned, but the back is not.
Yes, and she's found on a hiking trail by a family.
A family who knows what burnt flesh smells like.
Well, that was the description from the police lawyer.
Oh, okay.
It would smell like barbecue, probably.
Probably.
Gross.
I mean, barbecue's not gross.
No, I can get one. Yeah.
Oh, then we're so we are but animals.
Yeah, that's true. We are meat.
Items recovered from the body and scene included jewelry, a broken umbrella, bottles, a watch, remnants of nylon stockings, and rubber boots. However, oddly, the jewelry and watch were not found on the body, but rather beside it, as if they had been placed there. All of the identifying labels on her clothes had been removed. Even the bottles found with the body had their labels rubbed off. With no clues to her identity, the police began looking for a witness who might be able to identify her. She is referred to as the East
Why the
Woman.
backstab?
Sticks, man. Anytime anyone's got the labels removed on their things, very fishy, very fishy.
I mean, one thing you can infer is
I
it
could've
does
just
seem like
focused
there
on
was another person that may have been involved.
Wasn't
This
that fun?
doesn't strike me as
It's
an
fixed.
accident, nor does it strike me as something that was self-inflicted.
But why do they do that with the clothes? What if I'm a body somewhere? I don't have ID on me, maybe, but they find my pants. Go, Levi's, huh? This must be shame a day.
Well, I mean, if it's fancy clothes, they could then go to fancy department stores, ask if you've seen this person, then go to the next step of identifying them.
Are
But
they fancy?
I don't know. I mean, that's just where my mind goes, but then again, I do have a superior detective mind.
I don't know about that.
I mean, I get why you can make that conclusion.
It just seems like an unnecessary precaution.
Or very thorough.
An autopsy of the body discovered a large amount of venom, a sleeping pill, in her stomach. Around 50 to 70 pills. Her bloodstream had not fully absorbed them before her death. They also found smoke particles in her lungs, which denotes that she was still alive while she burned. Petrol was also found in the same near her body, and it was evident that it was utilized in the burning. There was also a high level of carbon monoxide in her. A strange bruise on the right side of her neck was also discovered. After the autopsy, the death was determined to be a probable suicide due to the sleeping pills and the carbon monoxide from the fire.
50 to 70 pills is a lot. You could see why they may have thought this may be a suicide, but they weren't fully absorbed by the time of burning.
seems odd to burn yourself. If you're
That's what
taking 70 sleeping pills,
Why
why
then
are
go,
you burning yourself?
let's set myself on fire now?
Yeah. If I'm gonna die, and you say, well, you can go to sleep. You say, that sounds like a good option. Or alternatively, we can set you on fire.
Yeah, we could do the thing that's generally considered the worst way to die.
Yeah. I think I'd go with bombs.
Yeah, me too. I think that would be a 99% consensus. Just remember these odd details. Good, good. Aquaman. Okay, you need
Jesus Christ. So stupid. In fact, the spot where she was found was the scene of many suicides in the Middle Ages, and also where some unfortunate hikers fell to their death in the 1960s, thus earning the title Death Valley from locals. The site was remote, difficult to climb, and definitely not a hiking path.
Wait, you said this was not a hiking trail? What's his family doing out there?
I considered that first.
Alright, kids, let's go for a little hike in Death Valley.
I guess maybe they want to challenge